How soon after you started that you had clients to work with?
Well, almost immediately, because I first bought a 4-track analog recorder. And even before I could master it, I guess people heard about me having this recorder, and they came knocking on my door. And so I had to get ready quicker than I anticipated. And I did a number of recordings with that 4-track recorder, a lot of the tents, with Darky in particular, Brian Hurst tent, Black Roots, for example, and a number of Calypsonians, many of them, African Teller, Lady Beginner, Lady Cheryl, a bunch of them right from the outset. I got involved. I mean, I remember on occasion doing probably about 20 songs in one night, in 2 tents. One came from about 7 o'clock, and by midnight or 1 o'clock we had recorded maybe 10 songs. Another tent came about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and we went through the night and recorded.
We will clock in sometime about 5 o'clock in the evening, and we will not leave there until 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, I remember periods when the guys would organize oil dump and take it to the studio, and at end every other session we'll go and get some oil dump to make sure that we had the necessary energy to keep this thing going.
You did 20 tracks in one night from 2 different tents. Is this sort of thing still taking place? Do you have that amount of action coming from the tents nowadays?
No, I at least not in my studio. I don't think it happens. It seems like the guys record more or less now on an individual basis. So I am not aware that the tent per se undertakes to record the artist. But this is what they used to do many years ago, meaning the tent would seek sponsorship to help with the recording costs and with the running of the tents. I'm not sure that takes place still.
In the early days, who was the outstanding person you worked with?
Well, I would have to say Tangler. Because he first came here to record with Black Roots.
We had a calypso tent by the name of Black Roots, and a fella by the name of Praying Mantis was the leader of that tent. We get by Dix, and when we reached there, I say, I like that man, Apparently, the bell rang and man had to go inside. So we couldn't chat with him. Me so couldn't chat with him. So we go inside. They have everything settled down. They say, well, okay, this one going first, the next one going second, third. Well, I make a big song there. And Dix say, you is the man.
And there was something about Tangler that I figured I could work with. And after that year, I produced a number of songs for him. One of the bigger ones being Bouncing Low, which won the Road March in 1996. And prior to that, there was what people call the Callaloo. The thing don't work, what you put in the Callaloo. But also Praying Mantis had some big hits. Federation, for example, was a big one done here by Praying Mantis. Bubbler himself have done.
Now in 1989, I recorded a song with Dix called You, and a song called Low on Costume. And this song had the studio kicking up all the time. There was a collective effort, between the tent and Dr. Dix and the engineer to create that product. Dix sat with us, and in fact with the drummers and the other musicians, and put this input. Everybody had that input into the music. And so at the end of the day, the music flourished together with the engineering touch.
Was there a sort of island divide, looking for a different sound from each area?
I don't know that is so. Maybe the artists could better answer that. I wouldn't say there was competition per se, but obviously we wanted to put out the best that we could. So we listened to what other people were doing, and we tried to do better. I remember listening to Moss's brass, and that was something I always envied. Even the keyboard brass was more realistic than the other studios or bands used to produce at the time. So there was that sort of interest.
When you moved on and established your studio, by then I suppose it was established as a good studio and you put out a lot of songs.
Right.
How did things develop after that, musically?
If we go back a bit to say that at first, well, there was Moss Studio, and then my studio, Great Things of Africa, in the early 80s. I believe the next studio to come into being was by Trevor Friday. And he also, had an interesting, or has an interesting sound. So there was and Trevor himself, I should have mentioned, did quite a lot of work in the before he set up his studio, in my studio. So I would think that he would have gotten at least some ideas of what to do and what not to do in order to make his studio successful. So after Trevor set up his studio, shortly after, you had people like Mount Zion Studio and Duncan, Chinese Duncan Studio. The name escapes me now. You had people coming on like Fat Tracks, Star Sound, and quite a few others. So since the 80s, it has multiplied to the extent that I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if we have at least 10 or so studios.
Is that a good thing, though?
Yes, I think so, in the sense that the good ones will survive, because the artists are getting wiser and wiser. They know what they look for. So there's nothing wrong with anybody setting up a studio, but whether you can survive will depend on how you meet the needs. And the different studios have different strengths. Success will determine who remains.
Where does your emphasis lie now? Is it still on the recording studio or your development of artists?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, I am not trained in artist development, but just from experience, I have some ideas which I like to experiment with. But I see that there is a dire need for trained persons. If we have to develop a music industry in Grenada, we need trained managers, you need agents, you need all the people who surround artists, because the industry is at that point where it requires experts to take it further. I mean, when I listen to music, for example, back in the 80s versus now, the music has always been, in terms of structure, the chord structure, the melody, the lyrics has always been good, as far as I'm concerned. The recording facilities haven't been the best, but it has improved. To the extent now, we have good lyrics, we have good melodies. I think the studios have come a long way. But I believe we have a hindrance in terms of the use of voicing. I have a problem with artists and how they use their voice.